Thomas Rivera had been cleaning the offices of Meridian Industries for 12 years. Every evening, after the executives went home to their suburban houses and the office workers headed to happy hour, Thomas would arrive with his cart of supplies and begin the quiet work of making everything pristine for the next day. At 55, Thomas had weathered hands and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses that had seen better days. He wore his uniform with dignity, took pride in his work, and never complained about the long hours. What people didn't know about Thomas was that every evening he was also studying. Correspondence courses in business administration that he completed at the kitchen table after his 10-year-old daughter Maya went to bed. Maya was Thomas's entire world. Her mother had passed away when Maya was just 3, leaving Thomas to navigate single parenthood with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else in his life. Maya had inherited her mother's bright smile and her father's thoughtful nature, along with an artist's eye that saw beauty in the most unexpected places. The annual Meridian Industries Charity Gala was the kind of event Thomas usually only heard about in hushed conversations among the office staff. It was held every December at the Grand Ballroom downtown, with $500-a-plate dinners and speeches about corporate responsibility. Thomas had cleaned up after enough executive meetings to know it was considered the social event of the year for everyone who worked at Meridian. This year was different, though. This year, the gala had a new purpose: raising funds for the city's after-school arts programs, the same programs that had become so important to Maya's development. Thomas learned about the cause while emptying wastebaskets in the marketing department. He'd paused to read a discarded flyer, his heart swelling as he recognized the program that had given Maya such joy. She'd been attending the Riverside Arts Center for 2 years now, spending her afternoons painting and drawing while Thomas finished his evening shift. That night, as Maya showed him her latest watercolor, a sunset over the city that somehow captured both hope and longing, Thomas made a decision that surprised even himself. "Maya," he said carefully, "how would you feel about attending a fancy dinner with me for the arts program?" Maya's eyes widened. Like a real fancy dinner with fancy clothes? Thomas nodded, though his stomach tightened as he thought about the ticket price. It would mean eating rice and beans for the rest of the month, and probably taking on extra weekend cleaning jobs. But watching Maya's face light up with excitement, he knew it was the right choice. The next morning, Thomas approached Mrs. Henderson in Human Resources with a request that took all of his courage to make. "I'd like to purchase 2 tickets to the charity gala," he said quietly, standing in her doorway with his hat in his hands. Mrs. Henderson looked up from her computer, clearly surprised. "Oh, Thomas. Well, of course. Though I should mention it's quite formal. Black tie event." "I understand, ma'am. It's for a good cause." Something in Thomas's dignity touched Mrs. Henderson. She'd worked with him for years, had always found him to be respectful and hard-working. "Let me see what I can do about getting you tickets at the staff discount rate," she said kindly. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Thomas visited 3 different thrift stores before finding a black suit that fit reasonably well with some alterations. For Maya, the search was more challenging. She needed a dress suitable for such a formal event, something that would help her feel confident and beautiful. They found it at a consignment shop on the other side of town, a navy blue dress with small silver stars embroidered along the hem. It had probably been expensive when new, but here it was, priced within Thomas's careful budget. Maya tried it on and twirled in the dressing room mirror, and Thomas felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I look like I'm wearing the night sky, Daddy," Maya said softly. "You look perfect, Mija," Thomas replied, meaning it completely. The evening of the gala arrived with December's crisp air and early darkness. Thomas had borrowed a car from his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had insisted he take her late husband's good cufflinks for the occasion. As he helped Maya into the car, both of them dressed in their finest, he felt a mixture of pride and nervousness that made his hands slightly unsteady. The grand ballroom was exactly as elegant as Thomas had imagined. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables set with fine china and fresh flowers. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos escorted women in designer gowns, their conversation a blend of business talk and social pleasantries. Thomas and Maya found their assigned table near the back of the room. As they settled into their seats, Thomas noticed the subtle glances from other attendees. He was used to being invisible in his work uniform, but here, dressed up and accompanying his daughter to a social event, he felt suddenly very visible indeed. "Daddy," Maya whispered, "everyone looks so fancy." "We look fancy too," Thomas whispered back, adjusting his borrowed cufflinks. "Remember, we belong here just as much as anyone else." But as the evening progressed, Thomas couldn't ignore the whispered comments from nearby tables. He caught fragments of conversations. Questions about who had let the help attend as guests. Murmurs about whether there had been some kind of mistake with the seating arrangements. Maya, with the keen intuition of childhood, sensed the tension even if she didn't understand it completely. She moved closer to her father, her small hand finding his under the white tablecloth. The situation came to a head when Richard Blackwood, a vice president Thomas recognized from the executive floor, approached their table during the cocktail hour. "Excuse me," Blackwood said, his voice carrying the kind of authority meant to intimidate. "I think there might be some confusion about seating. This section is reserved for Meridian employees and their families." Thomas felt heat rise in his cheeks, but kept his voice steady. "I am a Meridian employee, sir. I purchased tickets for my daughter and myself." Blackwood's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what department are you in?" "Building services," Thomas replied with quiet dignity. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the tension in Blackwood's voice. Thomas saw other executives exchanging glances, some looking uncomfortable, others watching with the kind of curiosity reserved for social dramas. "I see," Blackwood continued, his tone suggesting that he didn't think building services staff belonged at such an event. "Well, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding about the dress code." That's when Maya stood up. At 10 years old, she was small for her age, but she faced Blackwood with the kind of fierce determination that Thomas recognized as pure courage. "My daddy bought these tickets," she said clearly, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "He bought them because he cares about the arts program that helps kids like me. And he looks very handsome in his suit." Thomas felt his heart swell with pride and protectiveness. He started to place a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder to guide her back to her seat, when another voice cut through the tension. "She's absolutely right." Everyone turned to see Victoria Meridian herself walking toward their table. At 62, she was an elegant woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, the CEO who had built Meridian Industries from a small family business into a national success. Thomas had seen her occasionally during his evening rounds, always working late, always treating the night staff with the same courtesy she showed everyone else. "Thomas Rivera," Victoria said, extending her hand to him with genuine warmth. "I've wanted to meet you properly for some time. Mrs. Henderson tells me you've been with us for 12 years. Thomas stood quickly, shaking her hand with surprise. "Yes, ma'am. 12 years this month." Victoria turned to Maya with a smile that transformed her face. "And you must be Maya. I've heard wonderful things about your artwork from Mrs. Patterson in accounting. Her granddaughter is in your arts program." Maya's nervousness melted away under Victoria's genuine attention. "I painted a picture of the building where Daddy works," she said proudly. "It looks different at night when all the lights are on." "I'd love to see that painting sometime," Victoria said. Then she turned back to Thomas, her voice carrying clearly enough for the gathered crowd to hear. "Thomas, I hope you know how much we value your dedication. The work you do isn't just about keeping our offices clean. It's about creating an environment where everyone can do their best work. That matters tremendously." Blackwood shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing that his assumptions had led him into awkward territory. Victoria continued, her words deliberate and purposeful. "Maya, your father is exactly the kind of person we're honored to have as part of the Meridian family. And you, young lady, are exactly the kind of bright future that makes programs like tonight's so important. She gestured toward their table. Would you mind if I joined you for dinner? I'd love to hear more about your artwork, and I have some questions for your father about his insights into our night operations. As Victoria settled into the chair beside Maya, the whispered conversations around them shifted from judgment to admiration. Other guests began to see Thomas not as someone who didn't belong, but as someone who had worked hard to support something he believed in. Throughout the dinner, Victoria engaged both Thomas and Maya in genuine conversation. She asked Maya about her favorite subjects in school, her dreams for the future, her thoughts on the arts program. She asked Thomas about his observations of the business, his ideas for improving efficiency, his goals for his own education. "You're studying business administration," Victoria noted when Thomas mentioned his correspondence courses. "Have you thought about what you'd like to do with that degree?" Thomas glanced at Maya, then back at Victoria. "I'd like to understand how businesses work from the inside," he said honestly. "Not because I don't value the work I do now, but because I think I could contribute more if I understood the bigger picture." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "We have a management training program that might interest you. It's designed for employees who show initiative and leadership potential. Would you be open to discussing that?" Thomas felt his breath catch. Yes, ma'am. I would be very interested in that conversation." As the evening wound down and the charity auction raised record funds for the arts programs, Thomas found himself surrounded by people who had begun the evening seeing only his occupation, but ended it seeing his character. Maya fell asleep in the car on the way home, her head resting against Thomas's shoulder, still wearing her dress with the silver stars. As he carried her up to their apartment, Thomas reflected on the evening's lessons. He'd learned that dignity isn't something you can buy or borrow. It's something you carry with you. He'd learned that courage sometimes comes in small packages, like a 10-year-old girl standing up for what's right. And he'd learned that the most important moments of recognition often come not from climbing higher, but from standing exactly where you are with pride and authenticity. But perhaps most importantly, he'd learned that sometimes, when you have the courage to show up as yourself, the right people will see you exactly as you are, and find that to be more than enough. 6 months later, Thomas began Victoria's management training program. Maya continued with her artwork, her paintings now displayed proudly in both their apartment and Thomas's new office. And every December they attended the Meridian Charity Gala, not as outsiders looking in, but as valued members of a community that had learned to see beyond uniforms and assumptions to the human dignity that connects us all.